Hi, I'm Kate, and for my presentation I wanted to go over the differences between a molecular compound versus an ionic compound with an emphasis on the ionic and covalent bonds. That sounds like a mouthful, I know. That's why I picked this topic, because chemistry is not my strong suit, and I wanted to pick a topic where I could learn something as well as hopefully teach something too. So my goal for this presentation is to hopefully learn about the compounds and the bonds a little bit better while teaching someone as well. To start off, I would like to go over what a compound is to begin with. A compound is two or more different kinds of atoms that are electrically neutral overall, but are held together by chemical bonds. And chemical bonds are just forces that hold the particles together. That's what we call them. And the elements can either be monatomic or polyatomic. The monatomic atomic elements are individual atoms in their elemental state. So they're stable by themselves, they don't need any bonds. The best example of these are the noble gases. So over here on the left-hand column of your periodic table, you will find all of the noble gases, and they're all monatomic elements. And the polyatomic elements consist of two or more atoms of the same kind that are chemically bonded together. A good example of this is oxygen and nitrogen. These atoms are more stable when they're bonded together with an atom of the same type. And onto the bonds. The covalent bonds are where electrons are shared by two neighboring atoms. So basically they're bonded by sharing these atoms. And it can be a single bond, which involves two shared atoms, a double bond, which is four shared atoms, or a triple bond, which is six shared atoms. And I'll give you an example of this in just a second. The ionic bonds is an electrostatic attraction between two oppositely charged ions. Basically the sharing of electrons, where one atom has too many electrons and this atom needs an extra one, so they share them together. As an example, I have sodium here with its extra little electron, chlorine there with its missing electron, and sodium's going to be a nice guy and help chlorine out. And then you have our covalent bonds down here with the water, the CO2, and the carbon monoxide. You can see the hydrogen singly bonded to the oxygen singly bonded to the carbon and the oxygen triply bonded here. Now, when you have a bond that is between two nonmetal atoms, it's a covalent bond. So again, going back to the periodic table, you have all of the elements. Most of them are metals, some are nonmetals, and knowing which is a really good way to differentiate the kind of bonds. So you have the covalent bonds, which are between two nonmetal atoms, and then you have the ionic bonds that are between a nonmetal and a metal or two metals. And this is really helpful when determining which kind of compound you have. So if you have a molecular compound, that means that it's using covalent bonds, which means that it's between two or more nonmetal atoms. An example of that would be methane, the CH4, H2O, or hydrogen chloride. And then if you have a compound with one or more ionic bond, even if it has a lot of other covalent bonds, it will have ionic behavior and is classified as an ionic compound. And an example of that would be potassium chloride or calcium hydride. Now this is all very confusing, so the physical properties of the compounds can help differentiate between molecular and ionic. If a compound is in a gas or liquid state at a typical room temperature, it's usually a molecular compound. if a compound is an ionic compound, it is always going to be solid at room temperature. However, just because a compound is a solid does not mean it's ionic. It can be a molecular compound as well. To sum up, chemistry is confusing. Hopefully this helped clarify the difference between a molecular and ionic compound and help clarify the bonds as well. Thanks.